A check cannot hold a child at night. Money without presence is just permission to stay absent.
The glass walls of the 42nd floor conference room framed Chicago's skyline like a trophy case. Cairo Ward stood at the head of the mahogany table, laser pointer in hand, walking 6 senior executives through projections that would reshape their Q4 strategy. His custom Tom Ford suit hung perfectly on his 6-foot frame. Every word he spoke carried the weight of a man who had never lost a negotiation. Revenue growth of 18%, sustained over 3 quarters, he said, advancing the slide. Market share expansion in the Midwest corridor, aggressive but achievable. The executives nodded, leaning forward. This was Cairo at his best, commanding, precise, untouchable. Then the door opened. A courier stepped inside, tablet in hand, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Cairo. "Mr. Ward, urgent delivery. Signature required." Cairo's jaw tightened. He didn't break stride. "My assistant handles deliveries. It's from Klein and Associates, sir. The legal directive says hand-to-hand only." The room went quiet. Cairo took the envelope, scrawled his name across the digital signature pad, and dismissed the courier with a glance. He turned back to the presentation, the envelope still unopened in his left hand. But something in the weight of it, the thickness, the embossed law firm logo, pulled at him. He excused himself. Cairo stepped into his private office and closed the door. The city stretched out below him, indifferent and eternal. He slid a finger beneath the flap and pulled out the documents. The words blurred. He flipped through the pages, custody arrangements, asset division, a timeline for separation, and then, buried in the 3rd paragraph of her attorney's cover letter, a single line that stopped his breath. "Mrs. Ward requests that all communications regarding this matter respect her health and well-being during this time." He had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking. He had stared down hostile boardrooms, federal investigators, and corporate predators without flinching. But one sentence from his wife had just undone him. His hands didn't shake. Cairo Ward had trained himself not to show weakness. But the room felt smaller, the air thinner, and for the first time in years, he had no response. Clipped to the back of the petition was a handwritten note. Her handwriting, sharp, elegant, unmistakable. "Cairo, I'm not leaving you because of the woman you held. I'm leaving because you stopped holding me. Don't call it love if love never gets a seat at the table. Don't call it partnership if I'm only seen when I'm useful. I won't raise our child in a home where presence is measured in square footage and affection is scheduled between board meetings. You built an empire. I just wish I had been part of it instead of a footnote." Sabria. Cairo set the papers down on his desk. He stared at them for a long moment, then looked out at the skyline again. He had given her everything. The penthouse, the cars, the vacations, the security. He had worked 70-hour weeks to make sure she never wanted for anything. And she was walking away. Worse, she was carrying his child, and she was walking away. He thought back to the night 3 weeks ago. The storm, the office, the woman who had cried on his shoulder after her own marriage fell apart. He had held her, nothing more. But Sabria had seen it. Seen him with someone else in a moment of vulnerability he had never offered his own wife. He hadn't cheated, not technically. But maybe that was the point. He didn't sleep with another woman. He just held her, and still lost his pregnant wife. Ever thought you were doing everything right, only to hear someone you love say, "You're never really here"? Cairo believed providing was enough. He measured love in bank statements and real estate. He thought success spoke louder than words, that achievement could substitute for attention. By the time he realized what legacy really meant, divorce papers were sitting on his desk. What he does next will either rebuild his family or destroy everything he spent his life building. If you've ever loved someone who felt a million miles away, even when they were right next to you, like this video, subscribe to Mr. Duskmore Stories for tales that challenge how we see success, love, and what really matters. And as you listen, ask yourself, are you building a life or just a reputation? Cairo Ward didn't learn about success from business books or motivational seminars. He learned it from his father's calloused hands and silent expectations. Jairus Ward had been an army veteran who turned a single delivery truck into a small regional logistics company. He worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week, and never complained. Not once. "Ward men don't fall apart," he'd say, tightening a bolt or signing invoices at the kitchen table. "We fix what's broken. We finish what we start." Cairo absorbed every word. He watched his father skip meals to make payroll. He saw him shake hands with clients even when his back was throwing out. Strength, to Jairus Ward, wasn't optional. It was identity, and Cairo wanted to be just like him. Until the day he found him dead at his desk, reports still clutched in his hand. Cairo was 17 when he buried his father. The funeral was small. A few truckers, a pastor who barely knew Jairus, a lowered casket and a folded flag. Cairo stood at the graveside long after everyone left, staring at the fresh dirt, fists clenched in his pockets. His mother had cried herself silent. The business was drowning in debt. The house would be gone in 6 months. And all Cairo could think was, he worked himself to death, and we still lost everything. That night, sitting alone in his father's office, Cairo made a vow. He would finish what Jairus started. He would build something that couldn't be taken away. He would never be weak, never fall apart, never let emotion cloud his judgment. He would become the kind of man his father wanted him to be, no matter what it cost. By 32, Cairo Ward was everywhere. Forbes, Inc. magazine, Bloomberg Business. The architect of order, they called him. The man who turned failing companies into empires. The strategist who never missed. The executive who made billion-dollar decisions look effortless. He spoke at conferences. He sat on panels. He was quoted, photographed, studied. People admired him, respected him, feared him even, but no one really knew him. Behind the tailored suits and controlled tone, there was a man who wanted to be loved for something other than his net worth. A man who wanted to be seen, not as a machine, but as human. He just didn't know how to let anyone close enough to see it. Until Sabria. Sabria Ellington grew up in a warm kitchen that smelled like cornbread and gospel music. Her mother was a nurse who worked double shifts and still showed up to every school play. Her grandfather was a pastor who believed your word was your wealth and your character was your currency. "Don't stay where your soul can't breathe," he told her when she left for college. She became a maternal health advocate, working with women in underserved communities. She saw mothers abandoned emotionally, financially, spiritually, left to raise children alone while their partners chased everything but connection. She learned early a check could never hold a child at night. And she promised herself she'd never settle for a man who thought providing was the same as loving. Maternal health initiatives. Cairo had been invited to speak. Another polished appearance, another opportunity to be seen. He delivered his remarks flawlessly, wrote a generous check, and prepared to leave early. Then Sabria took the microphone. She didn't thank the donors with the usual flattery. She challenged them. "A check cannot hold a child at night," she said, her voice steady and unflinching. "Money without presence is just permission to stay absent." The room shifted uncomfortably. Cairo felt something stir in his chest, half offense, half intrigue. He found her afterward, introduced himself with his usual confidence. She looked him in the eye and said, "I know who you are. I'm more interested in who you want to be." No one had ever spoken to him like that. He was hooked. Their first real conversation lasted 4 hours. He told her about finding his father's body, about the vow he made, about the walls he built to survive. She listened without judgment, without trying to fix him, and when he finally broke down, really broke down, she held him and said, "You don't have to earn love, Cairo. You just have to show up for it." It was the first time in 15 years he'd let himself cry. They married in a small church ceremony 6 months later. No fanfare, no press, just family, close friends, and vows they meant with everything they had. They bought a modest home, cooked meals together, hosted her nieces on weekends, watching Cairo sit on the floor building block towers with them. And he promised her, "I'll build something that doesn't cost uses." He meant it. He just forgot how to keep it. Wardline Consulting didn't just grow, it exploded. A Fortune 100 contract landed on Cairo's desk 18 months after the wedding. Then another, then 3 more. Suddenly, the modest home wasn't enough. They moved into a sleek downtown penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that stretched across the entire city. Cairo's calendar became a war zone, 18-hour days, red-eye flights to New York, San Francisco, Dubai, a phone that never stopped ringing, meetings that bled into dinners that became conference calls. Sabria watched him transform from the man who cooked with her on Sunday mornings into someone she only saw in passing, a blur of expensive cologne and exhaustion. But he was happy, alive, winning, and she told herself it was temporary. Just 2 years like this, Cairo said one night, holding her face in his hands. Let me push hard now, lock in the foundation. Then we'll rest, we'll start a family, we'll travel, I promise. Sabria wanted to believe him. She did believe him. So she adjusted. She supported me. She showed up to his events, smiled for the cameras, and played the role of the successful man's devoted wife. 2 years came and went. The pace didn't slow. It accelerated. New offices, new clients, new staff, new cities. The promise he made became a lifestyle he never questioned. And Sabria realized something that made her chest ache. Cairo wasn't delaying their life together. He had replaced it. When Sabria got pregnant 3 years into their marriage, Cairo cried. Real tears. The kind she hadn't seen since their wedding night. He held her stomach and whispered promises about being different, being present, being the father his own dad never got to be for long. She believed him again. Then came the appointment. 12 weeks. Critical ultrasound. She'd marked it on the calendar weeks in advance, reminded him twice, texted him that morning. He promised he'd be there. But an investor crisis erupted an hour before. A deal worth 8 figures hung in the balance. He told himself it would only take 30 minutes. He'd make it in time. He didn't. Sabria sat alone in that sterile room when the doctor's face changed, when the screen went silent, when the words "no heartbeat" shattered everything. She called him 17 times. He was in a boardroom with his phone on silent. Cairo came home that night with a diamond bracelet, gilt wrapped in platinum and apology stones. He found Sabria on the couch, staring at nothing, her eyes red and hollow. "I'm so sorry," he said, kneeling in front of her. "I know I missed it. I know. But I'm here now, and I got you this." She looked at the bracelet, then at him. "I needed your hand more than this," she said quietly. He flinched, heard criticism, heard ingratitude. "I'm trying, Sabria. I'm building a life for us." "You're building a life around us," she said. "Not with us." He stood, pocketed the bracelet, and walked into his office. She didn't follow. That night, the space between them became permanent. After the miscarriage, things got worse. Phone at the dinner table, laptop open during movies, calls taken in bed at midnight, date nights rescheduled, anniversaries are celebrated 3 weeks later, conversations reduced to logistics, bills, schedules, surface pleasantries. Sabria tried to reach him. "You're here, but you're not with me," she said one Sunday morning, her voice breaking. He heard a complaint, accusation, a refusal to see how hard he was working. "I'm doing this for us," he snapped back. "No," she said, tears streaming. "You're doing this for you, and I'm just here." He didn't understand. So he did what he knew how to do. He worked harder, bought her more, upgraded the car, the vacations, the closet. He thought he was proving his love. She felt herself disappearing. Sabria started going to therapy, not because she wanted to leave, but because she needed to survive staying. She journaled. She prayed. She sat with her grandfather on his porch and listened to him talk about knowing when soil has gone barren. "You can water dead ground all you want, baby girl," he said. "But if the roots ain't reaching back, nothing's gonna grow." She cried in his arms that day. And somewhere in the quiet of her own heart, Sabria made a promise to herself. I will not vanish next to a man's dreams. I will not raise a child in a home where love is a memo and presence is a reward for good behavior. She didn't know it yet, but she had already started letting go. Elodie Travers arrived at Wardline 6 months after the miscarriage. She was brought in after a minor PR incident threatened to tarnish Cairo's carefully constructed image. A former client had made accusations online, nothing criminal but messy enough to require damage control. Elodie cleaned it up in 48 hours. She was sharp, efficient, and fluent in the language Cairo understood best: control, strategy, optics. She didn't ask him how he felt. She asked him what he wanted the world to see, and for the first time in months, Cairo felt understood. Not loved, not seen, but I understood. It was enough to make her indispensable and dangerous. Elodie became his shadow. Late nights in glass conference rooms, refining press releases and strategy decks. Early mornings over coffee, reviewing media coverage and investor sentiment. She never challenged his choices. She amplified them. She made him look good, made him feel competent, made him believe the story he told himself, that he was building something meaningful. He talked to her about fears he couldn't name to Sabria, fears about failing, about being exposed as less than the image he projected, about losing control. Elodie listened, validated, helped him craft solutions. It never occurred to him that this ease, this attention, this presence was a form of intimacy, the kind he'd stopped offering his wife years ago. The night it happened, a thunderstorm rolled across the city like a warning. Most of the staff had gone home. The office was nearly empty, just the hum of servers and the distant rumble of thunder against glass. Cairo was reviewing quarterly reports when Elodie walked into his office, phone in hand, her face pale. "My father had a stroke," she said, her voice barely steady. "They don't know if he's going to make it." Cairo stood immediately. "Go. I'll handle everything here." She nodded, turned to leave, then stopped. "My fiancé ended it," she said suddenly, her voice breaking. "2 hours ago. Said he couldn't do this anymore. That I'm always somewhere else." And then she shattered. Right there in his doorway, Elodie Travers, polished, unshakable Elodie, broke down completely. Cairo hesitated. He wasn't good at this. Emotional breakdowns made him uncomfortable. He preferred spreadsheets to tears, solutions to feelings, but she was standing there, shaking, gasping for air between sobs. So he did the only thing he could think of. He pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against his chest, and he held her. Fully, firmly, the way you hold someone who's falling apart. No kissing, no seduction, no hidden agenda, just comfort. The kind of presence he hadn't offered Sabria in months. His hand moved to the back of Elodie's head. His other arm wrapped around her shoulders. And for those few minutes, he was completely there. Soft, present, humans. Everything Sabria had been begging for. Sabria had wanted to surprise him. She'd discovered days earlier, pregnant again, 12 weeks, healthy heartbeat, clean ultrasound. She'd been terrified to tell him after what happened last time. But she thought, maybe, just maybe, this could be the reset they needed. So she packed his favorite meal and drove to his office through the storm. She stepped off the elevator with hope in her chest and food in her hands. And then she saw them. Through the glass walls of his office, Cairo holding another woman, his arms wrapped around her, his hand cradling her head. His face was soft in a way Sabria hadn't seen in years. She stood there, frozen, watching her husband be tender with someone else. She didn't knock, didn't scream, didn't cry. She left the food at reception, walked back to the elevator, and rode down in silence. One hand on her belly, one thought in her mind. You can be soft, just not with me. Is this cheating? Or is the deeper betrayal the years of choosing work, colleagues, and image over your spouse's heart? Cairo never kissed Elodie, never slept with her, never even thought about it. But he gave her something more dangerous than his body. He gave her his presence, his softness, his full attention, the very things Sabria had been starving for. Tell me in the comments, What would you call what Sabria saw that night? And if you're still here, hit like so this story reaches someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the affair isn't physical. Sometimes it's just everywhere else you choose to be. Cairo stood in his private office, the divorce petition spread across his desk like evidence at a crime scene. He read Sabria's letter again. Slowly this time. Cairo, I cannot raise our child in a house where image matters more than truth, where I have to schedule vulnerability, where love is a reward for good behavior instead of the foundation we stand on. This is not revenge. This is not punishment. This is the only way I know to tell the truth. I loved you. I still do, but I love our baby more. And I won't teach them that this is what love looks like, waiting for crumbs from someone too busy building monuments to notice the people holding blueprints. I hope one day you understand. Sabria. He set the letter down. His hands were steady, but his chest felt hollow. The first emotion wasn't grief. It was rage. She knows what this could do to my name. She knows how the press will spin this, how investors will see it, how competitors will use it. He grabbed his phone and called his attorney. I need you to draft a response. Controlled narrative. No details about the pregnancy go public. Position this as amicable, mutual, clean. His lawyer paused. Cairo, do you want to fight this or? I want to control the fallout, he snapped. That's what I pay you for. He hung up, paced the office, stared at the skyline, and for a fleeting second, a quieter voice whispered beneath the anger. What if she's right? He silenced it immediately. Cairo came home that night to silence. The penthouse had always been quiet, but this was different. This was emptiness. Her favorite mug was gone from the kitchen, the one with the chipped handle she refused to throw away. The wedding photos that used to sit on the mantel, removed. Her closet, half empty, hangers swaying slightly, as if she'd just left. He walked through the space slowly, noticing all the small absences. The books she kept on the nightstand, the blanket she curled up with on the couch, the lotion she left on the bathroom counter. Gone. For the first time, the penthouse didn't feel like an achievement. It felt like a museum, beautiful, expensive, perfectly curated, and completely lifeless. He sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the empty side where she used to sleep. Isella Ward showed up unannounced 2 days later. She let herself in with the spare key, found Cairo at his desk with files scattered everywhere, and didn't wait for permission to speak. So it's true, she said quietly. Sabria's leaving you. Cairo didn't look up. She overreacted. I didn't cheat. I didn't do anything wrong. You did everything wrong, Isella said, her voice sharp. You just did it with a briefcase and a smile. He looked up then, startled by the edge in her tone. She sat across from him, hands folded, eyes tired. Your father died with a full bank account and an empty chair at our table, she said. I buried a man who provided everything except himself. And you know what his legacy is, Cairo? He didn't answer. My loneliness, she said. Don't let that be what you leave behind. Coming from Jairus's widow, the words landed like a verdict. Cairo had no response. After his mother left, Cairo sat alone in the quiet. He pulled Sabria's letter out again and read the line that kept circling back. Don't call it love if love never gets a seat at the table. He thought about all the dinners he'd missed. All the conversations are cut short by phone calls. All the moments he'd been physically present but mentally gone. He thought about Elodie in his arms, how easy it had been to be soft with her in a crisis, when he couldn't remember the last time he'd held Sabria that way. And for the first time, the defense mechanisms cracked. What if I've been wrong this whole time? Cairo didn't draft a PR statement that night. He didn't call his lawyer to strategize a counter-narrative. Instead, he opened his phone and scrolled back through old text threads with Sabria. He found the name she'd mentioned once, months ago, when she'd asked him to consider therapy together. Dr. Amara Okonkwo. He stared at the contact for a long time. Then, before he could talk himself out of it, he sent an email. I need help. My wife is divorcing me, and I'm starting to realize I don't know how to be a husband. Can we talk? He hit send. and sat in silence, waiting for a reply. It was the first honest thing he'd done in years. Sabria moved into a brownstone 3 blocks from her sister's place. It wasn't sleek. It wasn't modern. It didn't have floor-to-ceiling windows or a view of the skyline. But it had something the penthouse never did: peace. She painted the nursery herself, soft yellow walls, second-hand crib, a rocking chair her grandfather built decades ago. She continued her work with the non-profit, now focusing on single mothers navigating pregnancy alone. Her sister came over most evenings. They cooked together, laughed, cried, and prayed. And Sabria made a quiet promise to the baby growing inside her. You will know safety. You will know your presence, even if it's just with me. She grieved the marriage, but she didn't regret leaving. Cairo tried to fix it the only way he knew how. Lavish flower arrangements arrived at her door daily. Orchids, roses, arrangements that cost more than most people's rent. She donated them to hospitals. He wired $50,000 to her account with a note for the baby. For anything you need. She sent it back through her lawyer with a message. Child support will be handled legally. This isn't about money. He offered to buy her a private estate, gated, secure, staff included. Her lawyer's response was colder this time. Mr. Ward, your client seems to believe every problem has a price tag. This one doesn't. Cairo sat in his office, staring at the returned check, and realized something that terrified him. He had no idea how to give her what she actually wanted. The court-mandated co-parenting counseling session took place in a small, neutral office. Sabria sat on one side of the room. Cairo sat on the other. Dr. Okonkwo, the therapist, sat between them with a calm, unflinching presence. Let's start with logistics, she said. Custody preferences, financial arrangements, communication boundaries. Cairo talked about his schedule, his resources, his ability to provide anything the child might need. Sabria listened quietly, arms folded across her stomach. When it was her turn, she spoke simply, I want our child to know their father, but I won't co-parent with a ghost. Cairo bristled. I've been under enormous stress. My father died when I was 17. I built everything from... That's context, Sabria interrupted, her voice steady. I'm asking for responsibility. Dr. Okonkwo leaned forward. Cairo, try this. I chose work over my marriage, and I'm sorry. No but. Just that. He froze. Cairo opened his mouth. I closed it. I tried again. I chose work over my marriage, and I'm sorry, but... Dr. Okonkwo raised a hand. Stop. No but. He exhaled, jaw tight. Pride warring with something deeper. Then he looked at Sabria, really looked at her, and saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the grief, the loneliness he'd caused. And he said it. I chose work over my marriage. I chose my image over your heart. And I'm sorry. Simple, bare, true. Sabria's eyes filled with tears. She didn't say I forgive you. She didn't reach for his hand. But something in her posture softened, just a crack. But it was enough to let a sliver of light through. 2 weeks later, Cairo did something he'd never done before. He skipped a major investor dinner, one that could have locked in a 9-figure deal, to attend Sabria's ultrasound appointment. He called the investor personally. I have a family commitment and I can't move. We'll reschedule. The investor was stunned. Cairo, this is a once-in-a-year window. Then we'll find another window, Cairo said. My family comes first. He showed up at the clinic 15 minutes early. Sabria was surprised to see him. She didn't smile, but she didn't send him away. They sat side by side and watched their baby move on the screen. Later that month, Cairo addressed his board directly. My marriage is not a PR play. It's where I failed, and I'm repairing it, not monetizing it. He stayed in therapy. He began grooming a second-in-command to share the load he'd carried alone for years. Slowly, he started to let go. Do you think deep patterns like this can really change? Or is walking away the only sane choice when someone has hurt you this deeply? Cairo was trying, really trying. But trying doesn't erase years of neglect. It doesn't undo the night Sabria cried alone or the baby she lost while he was in a boardroom. Some wounds don't heal just because someone finally shows up. So I'm asking you, what would you do? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if this story is hitting home, share it with someone wrestling with work, love, and what they owe the people who matter most. Because change is possible, but it's never guaranteed. By month 8, something had shifted. Not reconciliation, not yet, but a fragile peace. Cairo showed up to every appointment. He texted Sabria in the mornings asking how she slept. He brought her the specific brand of ginger tea she could still stomach. He didn't push for more, didn't ask to move back in, didn't treat kindness like currency he could trade for forgiveness. He just showed up. Sabria noticed. She didn't say much about it, but her sister did. "He's different," she said one evening, folding baby clothes on the couch. Sabria nodded slowly. "Different doesn't mean enough." "No," her sister agreed. "But it's something." They were still technically divorcing, but the wall between them had cracks now. Small ones, enough to let hope through carefully. Cairo was on air when it happened. A live television interview about Wardline's latest acquisition. A deal that had taken 6 months to close and put him back in national headlines. The host leaned in, smiling. "So Cairo, what's next for the empire you've built?" Before he could answer, his assistant appeared at the edge of the set, phone in hand, face pale. Cairo's jaw tightened. He'd given explicit instructions, no interruptions, but she mouthed 2 words that made his blood freeze. "It's Sabria." He excused himself, pulled the earpiece out, and stepped off set. The assistant handed him the phone. It was Sabria's sister, and her voice was shaking. "We're at the hospital. Something's wrong. She's bleeding. They're prepping for an emergency delivery. You need to come now." Cairo stood frozen for half a second. Behind him, the producer was waving frantically, pointing at the empty chair. The host was stalling, making a joke to fill the dead air. This was live television. Tens of thousands watching. A deal on the line. His reputation hangs in the balance. And for a split second, the old Cairo, the one who measured everything in optics and outcomes, almost went back to the chair. Then he thought of Sabria alone in that hospital room. He walked back onto the set, removed his microphone, and looked directly into the camera. "I'm sorry," he said. "My wife is in labor and there are complications. I have to go." The host blinked, stunned. Cairo didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked off the set. Cairo arrived at the hospital breathless, still wearing his suit from the interview. He found Sabria's sister in the hallway, outside labor and delivery. Her eyes were red. "They're stabilizing her," she said. "You can go in." He pushed through the door. Sabria was on the bed, monitors beeping, and 4 in her arm, her face tight with pain and fear. When she saw him, something in her expression cracked. "You came," she whispered. "Of course I came," he said, moving to her side. He took her hand, gently, carefully, and she gripped it hard as another contraction hit. For the first time in years, Cairo wasn't thinking about how he looked, or what people would say, or what this would cost him. He was just there, fully, completely, present. Between contractions, while the nurses adjusted monitors and prepped for delivery, Sabria looked at him with exhausted, tear-filled eyes. "Why did you really come?" she asked quietly. Cairo didn't hesitate. No script, no polish, just the truth. "Because I chased a name and almost lost my family," he said, voice breaking. "Because I was wrong, Bree, about all of it. No excuses, no buts. Just I was wrong." She closed her eyes, fresh tears sliding down her cheeks. "If we tell a different story," she said slowly, "we do it day by day. No grand gestures, no speeches without proof." "I know," he said. "I mean it, Cairo. I can't do this again." He leaned closer, pressed his forehead gently against hers. "Then let me prove it," he whispered. One day at a time. Their daughter was born at 11:47 that night. Healthy, strong, perfect. The nurse placed her in Cairo's arms, and he stared down at her tiny face, overwhelmed by something he couldn't name. This was a legacy. Not the headlines, not the deals, not the empire with his name on the door. This small, fragile life that depended on him to show up, not with money or status, but with presence. In the weeks that followed, Cairo made decisions that shocked his board. He signed papers handing operational control to a newly promoted executive. He turned down keynote speaking engagements. He stopped doing press. And when a reporter finally cornered him months later, he said it plainly, "If my child knows me more from articles than from dinner time, I've built the wrong thing." For the first time in his life, Cairo Ward meant every word. There was no fairy tale moment, no grand declaration, no sweeping music, no overnight transformation, just months of showing up. Cairo changed diapers at 3 in the morning. He learned how to swaddle. He made grocery runs and assembled a crib that came with instructions in 3 languages. He stayed in therapy, individual sessions every week, couples counseling twice a month. He didn't complain, didn't ask for credit, didn't treat his presence like a favor. He just did the work. One evening, Sabria's therapist asked her a simple question. "Are you seeing a different pattern or just different words?" Sabria thought for a long time before answering. "Patterns," she said quietly. "He's quieter now, less performative. But he's here, really here." 4 months after their daughter was born, Sabria sent Cairo a text. "Dinner here tomorrow night, 6:30, just us and the baby. Bring nothing but yourself." He arrived 15 minutes early, nervous in a way boardrooms had never made him. The brownstones smelled like garlic and roasted vegetables. Mismatched plates sat on a small wooden table. Neighbors' laughter drifted through the open window. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. It was real. Their daughter babbled from a bouncer in the corner. Sabria handed Cairo a glass of water and gestured to the table. "Sit," she said simply. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Sabria set her fork down and looked at him. "I needed to see if your change would last after the crisis," she said quietly. "Anyone can show up when the stakes are high. I needed to know if you'd show up when it was just Tuesday." Cairo nodded. "And you have," she said. "I see a man learning presence, learning to sit still, learning that love isn't something you schedule, it's something you live." He exhaled slowly. "I'm still learning," he admitted. "But I'm done worshipping my own image, Bree. I want my legacy to be this table, our child, and you." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. Sabria stood and walked to the counter. She came back with a folder. Cairo's stomach dropped, but when she opened it, he saw something different, a motion to pause and dismiss the divorce proceedings. "This isn't a prize," Sabria said firmly. "It's a promise to keep doing the work, together, if you want us. Not a photo-ready version. The real, messy, imperfect us." Cairo's vision blurred. He reached for the pen she offered and signed his name. "I want the version of us nobody else gets to see," he said, voice breaking. She nodded, tears streaming now. "Then let's build that," she whispered. And just like that, they began again. They didn't move back into the penthouse. Instead, they found a smaller home with a yard and a porch that creaked when you walked across it. They built routines that mattered, no phones at the dinner table, family days blocked off in permanent ink, ongoing counseling to keep them honest. Cairo restructured his role at Wardline. He stopped taking every meeting, every opportunity, every spotlight. He learned to say no. 2 years later, their daughter took her first steps in that backyard. Cairo was there, not on a business trip, not in a meeting, not distracted by his phone, just there, fully present, finally home. A community event brought them back into the public eye, not as celebrities, but as partners in Sabria's non-profit work. She introduced him with quiet pride. "This is my husband, Cairo Ward. He'll tell you what happens when you build a legacy without building a life, and how we got a second chance." Cairo stepped to the microphone. "I used to think the legacy was how many people knew my name," he said. "Now I know it's how the people who share my name feel when I walk through the door." Later that night, back home, Cairo stood in the hallway looking at the wall they'd been filling together. Candid photos covered it, their small wedding, ultrasound images, exhausted middle-of-the-night feedings, him asleep on the couch with their toddler sprawled across his chest. Sabria stood beside him, her hand in his. "This is the only museum I care about now," he said softly. She smiled. "Then let's keep filling it with truth. True legacy isn't built in boardrooms or net worth statements. It's built in love, integrity, and presence. Wealth couldn't fix what years of emotional absence broke, but humility, consistency, and the courage to change, those could help rebuild it. Cairo didn't become perfect, but he became present, and that made all the difference. What story will your family tell about you when the world stops watching? If this story hit home, tell me your biggest takeaway in the comments. Like this video, share it with someone chasing success at the expense of their soul. And subscribe to Mr. Duskmore Stories for more powerful soul-checking tales that remind us what really matters. Because at the end of the day, the only legacy that lasts is the one built at home. 5 years later, Cairo Ward stood in the backyard of their home, watching his daughter chase fireflies in the early evening light. She was laughing, wild, unfiltered joy, the kind that only children who feel safe can express. Sabria stood beside him, their son asleep against her shoulder. "You're smiling," she said softly. "I am," he admitted. "What are you thinking about?" He was quiet for a moment, watching his daughter spin in circles, arms outstretched. "I was thinking about the man I used to be," he said. "The one who thought legacy was about headlines and market share. The one who thought providing was the same as loving." Sabria nodded, waiting. "I almost lost everything chasing a version of success that would have left me completely alone," he continued. "And the worst part, I would have called it winning." She shifted the baby gently, her hand finding his. "But you didn't lose it," she said. "You chose differently." "Because you made me," he said, turning to look at her. "You held the line when I couldn't see it. You loved me enough to let me go until I learned how to come back." Sabria smiled, tears glistening. "We both did the work, Cairo. That's why we're still here." Their daughter ran up, breathless and beaming. "Daddy, did you see? I caught 3. He knelt down, eye level with her, fully present. "I saw every single one," he said, pulling her into a hug. Cairo Ward built an empire, but his real legacy was built in moments like these, small, quiet, unseen by the world, in diaper changes and bedtime stories, in showing up even when it was hard, in learning that love isn't something you earn or schedule, it's something you live. He learned that true success isn't measured in what you accumulate, it's measured in who stays when the lights go out and the applause fades. It's measured in how your children feel when you walk through the door. It's measured in whether the people who know you best also feel known by you. If this story moved you, don't just watch and leave. Like this video so it reaches someone who's chasing success but losing their family in the process. Share it with anyone who needs to hear that it's not too late to choose differently. Subscribe to Mr. Duskmore Stories for more powerful, life-changing narratives that challenge how we see love, ambition, and what really matters. And leave a comment. Tell me, what will your legacy be? Not the one on your resume. The one written in the hearts of the people you love.